Guys, lighting is important, maybe the most important thing, no matter what you do. Without lights, you're just really hoping for the best.
This light really saved the day on the shoot, huh?
Traditional lights were big, heavy, required wall power, and especially at weddings and events, that's sometimes really hard, if not impossible to come by, especially when the DJ steals them all. I mean, they're always doing that. So when Zhiyun sent me this X60 with a battery, I was super excited. And to just spoil my whole video, yeah, it's great. And you might be thinking, oh, he got one for free, so he's biased. Maybe, but I also bought another one with my own money. In fact, this is it right here. This is the one I bought. So I'll just review that one just so I'm for sure not biased at all. Okay, maybe make up your own mind, okay? I bought one, I was sent one for free. So 50-50, I guess. I kind of don't want this to be like those day one sort of highlight reviews. I want this to be a comprehensive review. We're gonna test out all the different modes and different situations, real life experience. I bought all the modifiers you can get for this thing. They use Zhiyun's proprietary mount. So I wanted to see if those are worth it or if you should just stick with the ones that came in the box. So, or maybe you should just stick with bonus mount, who knows? But if you wanna find out, you can jump to that part now. But let's go over my experience. So for weddings, location, photo shoots, or even just bringing this around for easy B-roll around my house and around studios and stuff like that, it's really changing the way I shoot in a lot of ways. It's great for the morning and the getting ready shots in hotels where it might not always be the brightest lighting or the sunniest day outside. And it's great for dark reception halls and for the first dances and speeches and things like that if we're focusing on weddings. And it's great for a few reasons. First off, it's small. In fact, I can fit 2 lights, 2 reflector dishes with the bubbles, and 2 batteries in just one case that these lights come in. Nice. It's also battery powered, which again is great for lights. It's super handy that you don't have to plug them in everywhere. And the batteries are nice too, because they can tell you whether they're plugged into the light or not, how much battery power is left, although it's indicated by just 4 LEDs, so it's not like super accurate, but you get a good idea. If it's on like 1 LED, probably don't use it. And this thing is super bright, being 60 watts. It's bi-color, and there's also the RGB version, which is what I got, which is great for a lot of creative looks, giving it like a pink or a blue backlight in creative situations, or just maybe even matching the lighting in a wedding venue to make sure the overhead lights and your lights don't clash too much. And of course, it's got all the RGB and effects modes, and even like a music mode, which changes every time it hears a sound, and those are all editable. And it's pretty dang bright, giving us 60 watt power. But with weddings and events, even though it would be nice, sometimes I'll go down to like 30, 50, 75% max power to avoid blinding people too much and to save on battery life, because at 100%, you're only getting about an hour maybe, so that's obviously not great. But you get over 2 hours at 33%. So anyway, that's why I have 3 batteries, because I think you should probably have at least 1 more battery for the devices you have. So 2 batteries, 3 lights. Wait, I said that backwards. God damn it. 2 lights, 3 batteries. The app also helps a lot. I was such a hater of apps for the longest time, but to change your settings or groups of lights on the fly, chaining multiple lights together, and also just like putting them into sleep mode or turning the brightness all the way down when they're not in use to save your battery in these wedding situations, especially as the batteries only go for so long. It's all just really, really nice and good. And especially when they're way up on the stands there with no controllers, that's like the only way to go. You can't be pulling those things down and starting them every time in a wedding or a fast moving event situation. But having that fill or backlight in a dark wedding environment really helps, even at that 50 or 33%. I mean, if you guys are anything like me, you love a good lens flare, and so having just that little spark of interest in the back while also shaping your light, you know, I don't mind too much. But enough about my experience. I wanted to test a few things about the output of this light with different modifiers that either come with the lights or can be purchased separately. And all these modifiers, I believe, work for the 100 watt version of this light as well, and maybe some others as well, since it's Zhiyun's own mount. So love it or hate it, I guess we will see. So if we don't use any adapters, we're taking our ambient light from -4.5 stops all the way up to 0, which is nice. What's not so nice is the quality of the light. Let's see if the adapters can help that. Moving on to the included dish, we get an additional stop of light from the 0 stops we had before, but it's really still pretty harsh. If we add on the rubber cover, we go about 1 stop under, 0.9 under the original just straight chip LED, but the light is a lot softer and it's actually possible to look at this light without going completely blind for a little while. The big dish, while it's largely the same, it gets that 1 stop increase from the baseline. I don't think the quality of light is great, and that reflection causes some weird issues. When you add on the bubble, we only lose about a half a stop compared to a full stop of the original, so we're about -0.5, and the light is definitely softer than the smaller dish and bubble. Moving on to the softbox, I was really curious if this would be worth it, and while it is a little bit narrow and not the softest thing in the world, it's a lot softer than the other attachments we've looked at so far. Plus, you're getting the same relative output, kind of a win-win. Plus, the color seems a little bit more accurate with this one. Now moving on to like a human subject for interviews or content creation or something. The straight light again is really flat and harsh, so when we throw in the small dish, it focuses in a little bit more and it is a little softer surprisingly, but still not amazing. Throw on the bubble and it is softer and easier for your talent to look towards, but I wouldn't say it's really soft. You'd have to bring the light a little closer. The second dish has some issues. I would really only use this with the included rubber cover, as we've got double shadows and even more dark corners despite the dish being physically larger than the small one. Although when you do add the rubber bubble on it, it actually is pretty decently soft, not 100% soft though. And I think the softbox again wins here. It's the softest light. It gives you the most control with the grid, which you can add or take away. I think it's the best overall adapter, and it's really nice how it can pack up pretty small. Although that isn't really comparable to like a full-sized Bowens modifier, those would all be better. It just doesn't feel right putting a Bowens mount on lights this tiny, but maybe I'll experiment with that in the future. If you guys have used Bowens mount with these tiny lights, either the X100 or the X60s, let me know how that went, because again, they just seem so tiny. I don't know. Let me know. At the end of the day, I think for some use cases, for me, I'm just gonna mostly use the built-in included dishes. They're small enough to fit in that case. They're the same, so depending on what angle of the dance floor I'm at, the lighting's gonna be the same more or less. But I would say if you're only getting one light, or if you wanna put it on both lights, or just don't care about space as much, the large dish and the softbox are better in pretty much every way, except for the large dish without the diffusion. Kind of does some weird stuff. And so obviously the small dish comes with every light as far as I know. The top tier package with 2 batteries comes with the softbox as well. And I think you always have to buy the large dish separately. But I do want to talk about some issues here. This is an honest review. And I guess, you know, like I said, I bought one, so I just talked about the one that they sent me. Now I'll talk about my issues with the one that I bought with my own money. Again, to just be as fair and balanced as possible. That joke's probably not as funny as I think it is, but you know, I'm still gonna keep using it. So issues you might have and other things you just might wanna know. Well, this is very common, if not entirely ubiquitous to RGB lights. When the RGB modes are active, it's only using some of the light diodes, so it won't be nearly as bright in all hues, and it's definitely not as bright as full output normally. It might be like 1, 2, 3 times darker, like equivalent of like 1, 2, 2.5 stops. It really just depends. I will say the app, especially when grouping lights together, does take a little time to get used to, but is generally good. Like I said before though, I do wish you could see the battery percentage. And while the size is small, the battery does add a lot of kind of real estate, and I can kind of see it sticking out sometimes if the light is in the frame. It looks like the non-RGB ones have black batteries, but these ones and the ones you can buy additionally all look to be silver, I think. Hard to say for sure, but yeah, I think the black would hide into the background a little bit better. But that's like a super nitpick, I admit. Maybe I should put some tape on it, I don't know. Anyway, the battery capacity also isn't the greatest, but I think if you need to, you can hook it up to USB-C, charge it. But like I said, for me, I haven't had a wedding where I've needed more than my 3 batteries. Typically, I have only needed my 2 batteries. And, you know, being able to put the lights to sleep whenever you're not using them, turn the brightness down when you're not using them, or just kind of fade them out over the night as the dancing gets started for, like, again, for weddings. The battery life has been acceptable to me, and especially like shooting in this kind of setup, this light again is on 1%, so it's gonna last for a while. But again, my recommendation is if you get one light, get 2 batteries. If you get 2 lights, get 3 batteries, and then you always have one backup, because you never want to rely on just a single battery for anything. That goes across the board. My last annoyance is just kind of an issue with the physical controls on the light. If you ever accidentally switch from CCT to like RGB, you have to swap through like the entire menu to get back to the beginning, and your lighting effects are going off when you scroll by them, your music effects are flashing when you go by them. So again, another reason to use the app, I guess, but I don't always want to use the app, and so that can be a little tough. But again, super nitpick. And I think the last issue with these lights are just like the lack of a Bowens mount, which I think people are going to be upset about. The lights are so tiny that I get it for once. Sometimes I get that more with others. They made this ZY mount I think that's what they call it. And like you saw earlier, or maybe you didn't if you skipped ahead, most of the attachments are pretty decent for what they are. But if you really want to use a Bowens mount adapter, it's out there, and you don't have to buy any of these, maybe slightly too expensive kind of attachments, although they're generally pretty good. So I've actually got a different light as my key here, but my backlight, like I said, is the X60, and I've been shooting a lot of videos recently where the X60 with the big bubble was my main light, and it did a pretty good job. You could definitely do worse, especially if you shoot relatively wide, like 24 to 35 millimeter range. You can get the light pretty close. And so for content creation, and especially something like this, like again, I'm shooting now at 1.8 lens. Both these lights are at 1%. Like, you don't need a lot of power, so even a 60 watt is way overkill. So I hope that really does maybe help you with your purchasing decisions. When I got sent these lights, I was wondering how this was gonna fit into my workflow, or if I would use it at all after this review. But now that I have 2 and they can all sync up with the app, and I can control it all from anywhere in a venue, put them to sleep, change the levels, match everything perfectly, or even just dial stuff in while looking at my flippy screen on my phone in my studio, or as a stand-in for an interview. There's no situation where these lights aren't at least going to be brought along just in case, and they're going to be used more often than not, and I've been using them consistently in my time with them. So definitely check my links below if you want to check out these lights, and I think they really nail it with this one. I would actually get these over the X100, although I haven't used that light, so I can't say for sure. But for me personally, this 60 watt smaller version with RGB is better than that super extra output from the 100 watts. Anyway, thanks for Zhiyun for sending me one of these lights. Thanks for B&H for sending me the other one. I did have to pay them first, oh well. And thanks for you for watching. If you liked this, and if you got to this point, I'm assuming you did, feel free to show it down below by liking, commenting, and subscribing. Believe it or not, that's a new thing they're doing here. And if you did subscribe, I'll see you when I see you.